Today's video is about the Buick Verano and why it got canceled. There are 5 things we're going to talk about in this video. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with the model years. And before I say anything else, I'm going to say that the Chevrolet Cruze and the Buick Verano are very similar. So if you hear me say anything about the Chevy Cruze, it's because these cars are pretty much the exact same car. This is just a little bit more luxurious. And I mean a little bit. This is just the Buick version of the Chevy Cruze, and that's all it is. And so we're going to go through the model years of this car, the pricing of this car, the competitors of this car, the sales numbers of this car, and the replacement, which we're not going to worry about because there was no replacement of this car, at least not yet. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with the model years. The Buick Verano first hit the dealerships in around September of 2011 and for the 2012 model year. And it didn't necessarily make a big greeting when it came to the dealerships. Most people didn't really know what this was. This was some weird looking compact, half luxury, half not car. It was very, very strange. They weren't really willing to accept this car as, why not get a Chevy Cruze, which was just coming out for the United States for the 2011-2012 model year. So most people said, well, why am I going to try this new kind of luxury version of the Chevy Cruze? And they went out and they bought the Chevy Cruze for about $4 or $5 grand less, which was actually a pretty smart idea. But I have no idea why Buick made this car, but they did. The rear of the Verano looks definitely like a Buick. This is something that only Buick would make. It doesn't look bad, but definitely not something that you would want in a luxury car. But at least it was there if you wanted it. The Verano was just sort of there. If you wanted a luxury version of the Chevy Cruze, which 3 people did, then you went out and you got a Verano. But most people said, why am I going to get a luxury version of the Chevy Cruze? If I want a luxury car, I would have gotten like a 3 Series or something like that. That's not the purpose of the Chevy Cruze. The Chevy Cruze is like a little commuter car. You don't want anything luxurious about the Chevy Cruze, or else you would go out and you would get a 3 Series or a CLA or an A-Class or something like that. But the Verano is here for some reason. Anyway, now we move on to pricing. And the pricing for the Verano is quite interesting. This particular Verano, for whatever reason, the 1SV starts at $21,000, and you can option it up all the way to $28,000 for the entire Verano lineup. Which again, you can get a Chevy Cruze for about $5 grand less with a lot more dependability and a lot more reliability. But whatever. So like I said, the 1SV starts at $21,000. And all of these cars pretty much have a 2.4 liter 4-cylinder. Everything except the premium turbo, which has a 2 liter 4-cylinder. They all make between 180 and 250 horsepower, and they all across the board have a 6-speed automatic. So the only noteworthy thing about the differences of this car is the pricing. So that's pretty much what I'll say, except for the premium turbo, which actually has some differences. So the base model starts at $23,000, which is a little strange. Why is the base model more expensive than the 1SV model? I don't know. Who thought this was a good idea? Somebody at Buick wasn't doing their job right. Anyway, the sport touring model starts at about $24,000. And then you can move up to the leather, which is exactly what it sounds like. Leather seats and a steering wheel, and you're paying about 26 grand for that. And then the premium turbo, which is actually the most notably different car, starts at 28,000, and it has a 2 liter 4-cylinder instead of that 2.4 liter. So it has a smaller engine but more power, 250 horsepower, and all of them are mated to a 6-speed automatic. As far as I could tell, there's no manuals or anything. It was just a 6-speed auto. And so the pricing of the Buick Verano is definitely a lot more expensive than it should be, considering what this car offers. This car is just a little bit more luxurious than the Chevy Cruze, but somehow they're trying to sell it for like 30 grand. I don't think that the Chevy Cruze is going to go for more than about 25. So the Chevy Cruze was more reliable, probably had more features, more people bought it, it was cheaper, it had more power. So what was the purpose of the Buick Verano? No one knows, and that's why it was canceled 3 years ago. Anyway, now we move on to the competitors, which is sort of the most interesting part of this video. And this car, like I said, goes sort of along with the Chevy Cruze. They have the same powertrain, pretty much. They have the same build quality. They have the same everything, except this one has a Buick badge and different lights. That's just about it. Everything else is General Motors. The Buick Verano and pretty much a Corvette have the exact same interior, which is interesting. But anyway, here are the competitors. The Chevy Cruze, obviously, the Dodge Dart, the Volvo S60, and the Chrysler 200. I don't even need to explain the Chevy Cruze. I've already said it like 6,000 times. The Dodge Dart is quite interesting. They came out around the same time. They were canceled around the same time. This was his biggest competitor, pretty much, for me, or at least what I think. Now, the Dart wasn't a luxury car, but it offered more than the Verano did for about the same price. So the Dart was technically a better value, but it was way less reliable. Then the S60 is also a pretty big competitor. They're both compact luxury sort of sedans. So I thought they would be competitors. And then the Chrysler 200 is up there for, I don't even know why, but they are competitors. So there's that. And so now we go on to sales numbers, and this is the last part of the video. So I obviously had to compare the Verano and Cruze. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Verano, then the Cruze, because the Verano looks pretty good until you take a look at the Cruze. And so let's go ahead and start off with the Verano. For 2011, it sold 265. Fine. The Verano was just hitting dealerships in the very last quarter of the year, so 265. Fine. People bought it, not a whole lot of people though. For 2012 though, a massive increase, 41,000 people bought it, so a decent amount of people for something that just came out. They didn't really know what it was, luxury Chevy Cruze. So these 41,000 people must really want a Chevy Cruze, except they want it more luxurious. I don't know who wants a luxury Chevy Cruze. If you want that, just get a 3 Series or something. But anyway, for 2013, this was its peak year, hitting 45,000 sales. So this car never broke even into the 50s. And then 14, it tumbled back down. 43,000 sales for the year 2014. And in 2015, it definitely plummeted. 31,000, nearly 32,000. So this definitely took a huge hit for the 2015-16 model year. And 16, it just steadily declined just a little bit though. We only sold 30,000 of these for the 16 model year. Then 17, it just hit the point of no return with 4,200 sold, and then they said, you know what, it's a waste of our time, so they pulled the plug after 17. But they were still able to sell a few stragglers for the 2018, and they sold 210. So in total, over those 8-year periods, they sold nearly 200,000, which sounds pretty good. Except what you're about to see, the Cruze got more than that in just one model year. Anyway, the Verano averaged about 24,000 units a year, which is all right. Definitely not something that you'd want for your brand. So I could definitely see why they pulled the plug because of these sales numbers. But then the Cruze, the Cruze just steps all over this car. It like squashes this car. For 2011, this car sold nearly 100 times more units than the Buick Verano, which is just stupid. Now, admittedly, this car was out for the 2011 model year. The Verano was not, but still, it's just stupid how much more the Cruze sold than the Verano. Then 2012, same thing. It obliterated it, 237 to 41. 13 was no better, 248 to 45. But 14, so they hit their peak sales around the same time. Because in 2014, the Cruze sold exactly 273,060 units. And 2013, the Verano peaked out at about 45,000. So they definitely did peak out at about the same time, but was that peak a lot higher for the Cruze than it was the Verano? Anyway, going on to 15, the Cruze sold 226,000, again, to 31, not even a comparison at this point. But then you can see that the Cruze is starting to go down in sales too. As in 2016, it sold 188,000 versus the Verano's 30,000. Then 2017, 184 to 4. Again, not even a comparison. And then 142,000 to not even 1,000. So the Cruze definitely sold way more. We're talking almost 2 million units, 1.7 million units sold for the Cruze over the exact same time period, and 216,000 on average. So this car sold nearly 10 times more units than the Buick Verano. That's just ridiculously stupid. So I can definitely understand why Buick pulled the plug, but why did they make this car in the first place? This car had no business even being a car. This would have been fine as a concept, but instead they made it a car. Or they maybe should have just, I don't know, maybe they could have made it its own model and not tried to compete with a Chevy Cruze. That's just stupid. That's just really, really stupid. I have no idea who thought this was a good idea. Somebody at Buick thought this was a good idea, and it was not a good idea. Anyway, so in conclusion, the Buick Verano was pretty much a flop. It had no business being a car. It didn't sell well. It was too overpriced. It was a little too underpowered. I can definitely understand why Buick wanted to make this car. It was a good idea in theory, on paper, but in execution, this was a very, very, very bad car. Buick had no idea what they were doing with this car. They just stuck it out there and expected it to sell. And then when it didn't sell, they had a surprise Pikachu face because they didn't know that was going to happen. But I honestly don't know why. And so that's about it for the Buick Verano. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.